Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the Shine Within podcast. I'm your host, Gina Kunadian, and I have a very special guest today. Her name is Phyllis Leavitt. She graduated from Antioch University with a master's degree in psychology and counseling in 1989. She initially co-directed a sexual abuse treatment program before going into private practice full-time, treating children, families, couples, and individual adults for over 30 years. She also published two books, A Light in the Darkness and Into the Fire. And she is currently preparing a new book called America in Therapy for publication. And I'm excited about that. And I want to know about this book here. So welcome, Phyllis. It's so nice to meet you.
Well, thank you so much. It's so nice to meet you, and thank you so much for having me today.
Of course. And now I just want to know a little bit about your background. What happened in your life in the 90s when you were journaling that something happened where it created you to become an author?
Yeah, well, I always wrote ever since I was a little girl. I always wanted to be a writer. I loved writing. I loved writing for school. I liked writing on my own. I wrote poetry when I was a teenager, and I always kept journals. And so I was keeping a lot of journals when I was younger, and I was also going through some really hard times, and I was in therapy. And I was keeping a journal sort of my progress. And while I was keeping that journal, I really began to get in touch with a much higher consciousness that was telling me very specifically what my soul was doing here in all the experiences that I was having that were difficult, and what my soul was learning, what I was here to transform and do with the difficulties that I was facing. So, sort of between the approach of therapy, which is really like trying to heal old wounds in this life, I got this bigger perspective of what my soul has been kind of working on through many lifetimes. And one of the things that came out of that was that my soul really wanted to have a voice. Like I was really working with this chakra, and my soul really wanted to speak and had a voice. Um, and that this consciousness that came to me, which I call like a divine voice or a divine source, was part of what I wanted to talk about. And so those two books that I wrote that are in print, A Light in the Darkness and Into the Fire, are all about the spiritual part of my journey. And sort of how that segues, if it's okay, I'll just sort of tell you how that segues a little bit into my present book.
Yes,
So all this
please.
time, yeah, I'm a psychotherapist. All this time I went to graduate school, um, back starting, I think, in 87 or 89. I don't even remember anymore. And I went to graduate school and got a master's in psychology and counseling. So I had these two worlds, this very spiritual, deep spiritual connection, and the world of psychology, and kind of healing the wounds to our conditioning from this life, and from our childhood, primarily a childhood, and any other influences in our immediate upbringing that were part of the conditioning that gave us messages about ourselves that were either good or not so good. And some of the ones I got, like many people, were not so great. Right, that we're kind of working through. And so what I realized, one of the things that was so beautiful about this divine connection that I made is I got many very, very specific messages. And one of them was that all pain is calling you home to your soul. That's the purpose of pain, is to transform it into a connection to your deepest self. So that was one message. And the other really profound message that I want to share with you here right now is what they said is that we all go home together. This isn't about me going to nirvana or me going to heaven. We're here to help our fellow human beings all make that journey back to our essential selves, back to our connection with source or God or spirit or goddess or whatever we call it. Each person calls it something else, their soul. But we're all here to help each other make that journey. And how it's really clear to me now that the world of spirit and the world of psychology merge is that one of the ways that we can help each other is by becoming emotionally and mentally healthy, because emotionally and mentally healthy people love one another and they care, and they're invested in repairing broken human relations. They're not invested in hatred or discrimination or violence. Um, does that make sense? And so how we can really help each other on this road to our own reconnection with whatever we call it, our heart, our source, God, um, is by being of service to one another. And the best way to do that is to get emotionally healthy. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yes, I love that because it's so oftentimes that we don't know why we are the way we are, and we really need to experience the darkness in order for us to see the light. And it's unfortunate, like in my situation, I had a lot of trauma as a young child, a lot of sexual abuse, and
Yeah,
from the ages of 6 to 12. And
wow.
I noticed that I was always angry all the time. Sometimes I still feel angry, it
Yeah,
doesn't go away necessarily. But
yeah.
I notice I get so angry. So do you feel like a lot of how adults act now is because of their childhood that they had?
Absolutely, 100%. And that's really what good therapy really focuses on. And I share that. I had also sexual abuse in my childhood, and that's what I was recovering from. And exactly what you said is what started me on my journey, which is I was a mystery to myself. I didn't understand why I made the choices that I made. I didn't understand why I felt like I had a dark cloud over me. I didn't understand why I felt like a flawed human being, you know? And so, and what I feel now is that as a nation, and this sort of segues to the book that I'm writing now called America in Therapy, we're the same as a nation. I think we don't really know why there's so much violence, why we're choosing leaders who are so invested in their own well-being and not the well-being of the populace, why they proliferate so much hatred and so much discrimination and so much withholding of the fundamental resources of life from so many people, which is exactly what abusive people do in their families. And
I
so I'm trying to tie what I know about the effects of individual abuse and the dynamics of individual abuse in families to what's going on in the family of America, so we can stop being a mystery. Why are
Mhm.
there accelerating mass murders here? It's not a mystery. We are not mentally well as a population, just as I wasn't mentally well in making some of the choices that I made. And fortunately, my body does not like substances. So if it did, I probably would have been an addict, because of the pain that I was in. But that wasn't the way I went. I just went more into depression and withdrawal, and making really bad relationship choices. That's what I did when I was young. And so it's
Same.
going to come out somewhere. It's going to
Hmm.
come out somewhere. And so, in therapy, we look at a person's symptoms. What do they come to therapy for? Their relationships aren't working. Their parenting is off. They can't find the kind of creative expression that they're longing for. Work environment is really troubling. They don't have friends, or the friends they have are either exploiting them or mistreating them or abandoning them or betraying them, whatever. We come because we're in pain, right? And so we look at the symptoms and then we trace them back to some of the causes. And I feel that the same thing can be done with our country. We look at our symptoms. Are we creating a healthy family environment for most American people? Do they feel loved? Do they feel like they belong? Are they provided with the resources they need? Do they have opportunity? Are they valued for their individual gifts? Are they honored for diversity? Are we providing that environment? No, we're not.
Oh, yeah, you're
Just
right.
like, just like in an abusive family, people are ostracized, their violence is reaped on them, they're exploited, they're not liked because they're too fat, they're too thin, skin is too dark, their hair is too dark, whatever. Um, or simply because an abusive person wants to take from them.
Hmm. Yes, and I agree with you. The world is so corrupt that it demonstrates all negativity. Our leaders, I mean, we shouldn't even have any parties, no Democrats, no Republicans. We're just human. We're just human beings that we're here to love and not just be divided. Everybody, I feel like everybody's divided, and there's so much influence in our culture when it comes to movies. It's all violent. You don't see there's all everyone's killing somebody, and
Yeah.
or it's sexual. There's a lot of pornography going on as well, destroying families. And then even, they want the women to work. So it's like they're not at home taking care of the children, and everything is all messed up in this world. And I agree with you. If we were to just be healed as a nation, like in your book, Therapy, America for Therapy, then America in Therapy, excuse me, then
Okay.
it would be a much better place, and we'd be happier, and we'd be all united.
And we would be people centered instead of power centered or possession centered or even technology centered, because those power and resources and technology would be in service of what's best for people. And I really want to say here, what's best for our children. You know, parents are the greatest influence on their children. If they role model love and caring and sharing and cooperation and peaceful conflict resolution, which I feel is really high on the top of the list, if they model that, their children learn that. And we have so many people in power right now in the family of America who don't model that. They are not invested in repair. They're not invested in the well-being of the family of America. It does that make sense? And so this is also an influence on our children that's way beyond what any parent can even provide. This is what's in the media. This is what's in the movies. These are the role models of the parents of America. Not all of them, but many that are in the news are role modeling behaviors that are dangerous and destructive. And we wouldn't want to tolerate those in our own homes, yet
Hmm.
we tolerate them from our government. And that, to me, is a sign of the declining mental health of our country. And that's why I'm
Absolutely.
saying America in Therapy, we need to restore our mental health if we want to be safe and even viable.
You're so right. Because if we just had good news every day, someone actually just shared with me that there's an app that is a good news app, and then they just use that, and they have like good stories, and then they have even this animal section, things that make humans laugh and feel joy. Because you see in the news even every day is the first thing you do is you'll go on your phone or you put on TV, and then there's going to be something, a death of
Yeah,
something, a tragedy here, a
absolutely.
car accident here, so and so is fighting, a shooting there, this is, and then of course it's going to be in our mind and our consciousness, and then we just go on our day in the back of our head. We really have that in us still. See, with
Yeah,
violence and everything.
and the sad part of it is two things. One, yes, that more good news isn't part of what we actually feed each other with the media. One of the things that was really interesting to me when I was writing my book is I did a lot of research on different topics. And one of the things that came up that was very heartening, but it isn't in the news, is that there's been research done on what percentage of the population actually volunteers their time to help others. And it's a huge percent. But that's not what gets talked about. So, that's just something nice to know that people are actually out there doing good things all the time that don't get mentioned. And the other thing that I think is sad about the way the media really makes sensationalism out of violence and discord and fighting and division is that it's not being labeled as this is a problem. This is dysfunction. What can we do, America, to heal this? Like, I have this vision. I kind of wrote about this in my book. I have this vision. What if we had mediators in Congress, people that we legislated, that we wanted people in Congress to help people listen to each other who have very different opinions and policies and stands on what should happen? What if we actually were committed to hearing one another, that a mediator was there to help resolve the problems instead of intensify them?
Right. That's a great idea.
Because that's what we do in therapy. If a couple comes to therapy or a family comes to therapy, we help them resolve their problems. We help them listen to each other's pain or each other's purpose or each other's, commitments to what they think is right and helpful and come to some mutual understanding. And it's,
Absolutely.
yeah. And these are the things we want in our families, right?
Totally.
Right.
Families, you don't see so many divorces or separations or, and,
Yeah.
children are going into the system, and that's so sad. I mean, like,
Why
oh
not
my
the family of
goodness.
America? Why not
Yeah,
family, you know?
it is so sad. And what are some ways that, in your expertise, because you're in psychotherapy for so long, what are some ways that you've helped families come closer together? What do you tell them?
Well, one of the things that um, there's many things, but one of the things that is, we often start with is, what brought you together in the first place? If it's a couple, what did you love about each other? What were your hopes and dreams for your family, even if they're not manifesting? What was that spark? What did you see in each other that attracted you or called you? And sometimes it's not the most healthy thing, but usually there's some goodness in there too. I saw that she was very kind. I saw that he was strong and, creative. Um, and because often we're attracted to people who complement us in some way. You have a quality that I don't have. I have a quality that you don't have. And that brings us together. And then we find out, later on that those qualities that we are attracted to annoy us. Right?
That is
Right.
so true. We're like, oh,
Right.
yeah.
So we start with that. We try to like remember the connection because the goal of any good therapy, the goal of healing is reconnection, whether I'm just in therapy by myself and I'm reconnecting to my essential self, or I'm in therapy with my partner and we're reconnecting to our love, or if we can't, that we're learning how to separate peacefully and respectfully, or we're learning how to reconnect, in a healthier way with our children or our boss or, whatever. But it's all about repair. And so we frame it that way from the very beginning. The goal is repair. Imagine if that was the goal for our country, if our goal was repair between the parties, if our goal was repair between the races and the different religions, between men and women, between
Mhm.
us and other countries. It
Yes.
would be incredible. So we know this. We know that if we frame our work together as the goal being repair and reconnection, that we're already on the right road. We're already on a road to peace, safety, and the rekindling of some kind of love. Then we look at what's in the way.
Hmm.
And one person might bring trauma that's being reenacted in the relationship, or they had terrible role models of relationship from their own parents that they've unconsciously imprinted into their own psyche. um, or a man might not see a woman as an equal, or a woman might not see a man as emotionally available, and so we work with the conditioning. But there's so many elements to therapy that I can't really
Yeah.
describe them all. But the thing that I just want to emphasize, because I think it really hits home with us as individuals and as a country, is we want to be able to hear each other's pain,
Mm,
because when we can really hear each other's pain, we can start to develop empathy.
hmm.
And when we develop empathy, then we're more likely to work things out.
It's so good and so true. Yes, and that's why when people are sharing and being vulnerable and sharing their story, then there's more connections being made. Like, I'll give an example. When I went to, because I had tried to commit suicide twice in my life, and then one time out of inpatient, I was in an outpatient program. And I felt like, okay, I felt first I didn't belong there. But then I'm hearing everybody else's story, how they're experiencing anger and anxiety, depression. I felt like, hey, these are my people. then I made these close relationships with them, and I didn't feel like I was by myself. I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. Someone can relate to me, and I can relate to them.
That's such a good point. That's such a good point because I think when people have trauma and they carry a lot of pain that they're just trying to manage on their own, inevitably, I know I felt this way, you feel alone. You just feel like you're alone in the universe, and we're not alone. We're really not. But it takes having a safe place to communicate with other people to start to build that sense of reconnection. And I think that's absolutely pivotal to healing. And that's why what's happening in our country is so sad, because it seems like so much of the policy making and the role models of how you deal with conflict are actually enhancing the disconnection and the feelings of, no one's going to hear me, on the other side, whatever, if that
Yes,
makes
it's
sense. And then
yes.
millions of people are being marginalized
Mm-hmm.
and have no
Yeah.
voice.
And then when they do have a voice, they're either shunned or they're just there's violence that happens afterward. It's like, oh,
And
nobody
that's
wins.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens in abusive families, and that's one of the connections I've been making in my book,
Mm.
that in abusive families, as long as an abuser is in power, they don't want feedback. They don't want to be stopped. They don't want to be held accountable for the impact that they're having on other people. So anyone who dares to tell the truth is in danger, is either going to be silenced or shunned or ostracized or shamed or hurt worse. And that's exactly what abusive governments do. And we're seeing it. Peaceful demonstrators being tear gassed and shot with rubber bullets and jailed.
So sad. It's like, why? They're being peaceful. They wanted to use their voice peacefully and
Yeah.
still get shut down. Now, this world is definitely corrupt, but I do see some changes happening and some shifts. I'm seeing a lot more entrepreneurial women and men.
Yes.
Yes, and then I'm seeing them more as like coaches and being involved, working with in either group settings with people or one-on-one individual basis. And it's neat because I feel like humanity is going through this shift right now. I think it feels like things are changing. It's
Yes.
where people are starting to wake up a little bit to what's going on in the world and in the surrounding.
I think that's absolutely true. And that's the good news. The good news is that sometimes it takes a lot of pain for us to wake up. And I think
Yes.
that's what's happening. And I just think, just being sort of, coming into this podcast world of seeing how many people are dedicating their time, like yourself, to creating forums for many voices to speak so that our voices are out there anyway, even if they're not on the nightly news. And there's places people can go to find people like themselves or find help or find education. And because I do think that education is one of the primary things that we need. We need to
Yes.
understand psychologically what's happening to us. We need to know the effects of abuse in families. We need to know what are the things that help. Sitting down and learning how to listen to each other the way we want to be heard. We can learn how to do this. We can learn how to respect our differences. We can learn how to settle disagreements without violence. We can learn to become much less judgmental and much more empathic. And so there's all these different forums to learn that in, and that's very exciting.
Yes, it is exciting because when I'm working with some women and when I'm talking to some women in my little collaborative group for entrepreneurial women, everyone's telling their story, and it's nice that they're just like, I helped so and so. They're struggling with this, but I feel like I helped them, and I just feel like there's so much more positivity happening, and then that is the good news. And like you're absolutely right, we did need to go to this dark stages in our life to see the light. And now that we're seeing the light, how can we help others as well see the light as well?
Absolutely. And I think what you're saying, and I'm saying sort of the same thing, is that if you've gone to the dark yourself, you can really have empathy for what happens to people when they're there or what brought them there. And we need that empathy for each other. And so I think that's the blessing in disguise, and it really is.
It is. And I think a lot of it is more like people need to learn how to love themselves
Right.
because they don't love themselves. And then that kind of then they lash out at other people because they're not happy with themselves. They're going to reflect their selves to others. And then it's like a domino effect. And then those other people will do the same. And then it just gets all messed up. How does one, what are some practices somebody can do to start loving themselves?
Well, I think there's different things. I think, first of all, I think, get help if you're really in pain. There's some messages in our society that we shouldn't need help. We should buck up, we should be stronger, we should move on, get over it. And, reach out if you're in pain because connecting to another human being who's empathic and helpful can make all the difference in a person's life. And we can absorb the love and safety from that person and bring it to our own world. And that's one of the gifts of psychotherapy. It's not Psychotherapy isn't the only place a person can get that. But it's certainly one place where it's safe to be who we are and be received by another person fully. So that's one element. Another is like if you have a calling, if something really speaks to you, like you love to draw, or you love music, or you love animals, or you love nature, or you love working with little children, whatever it is, like make place in your life for what really calls to you, even if it's not your job. If it's your job, fantastic. But make a place for what really calls to you because there's an endless source of our life energy that can be tapped into by following what calls us our passion. It could be anything. It could be, I like to do people's hair. It could, it could be anything. Um, but because we need that life force to bolster ourselves against some of the things that are more difficult or help us navigate through. Um, I'd say educate yourself, read. Um, if you don't know about something that's going on with you, read about it, talk to people, listen to podcasts, um, you know, get informed, open your world. And I know that when I was younger and I was really going through a hard time, reading biographies of other people who overcame great odds was a big source of inspiration for me before
Yes.
I actually did therapy myself. So, what other people have to share can be invaluable. Um, and then, if you have a calling to a spiritual connection or a religion or a practice or meditation, give that to yourself because the best source of self-love is finding some connection to your soul, your essence, your heart. Um, and it generates out from there. There's just so many ways to approach it and they're all good, and we don't have to pick one. And sometimes it's a crisis that brings a person, like what we've been doing isn't working, so we get to be open to something new.
Yes, I remember when I was in my recovery, early phase of recovery, nature was my biggest thing, and I loved just hiking and being in the beach, anything where I was in the elements, outside, breathing the fresh air. And no phone, no headphones, just me. And I felt I was connected to God. It's like, oh, the creation, it was just so magnificent and beautiful and very peaceful. And it soothed my soul. I felt like my soul was at home.
Yes, I had that too, very strong with nature. I still do.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
something I get from nature that I just don't get anywhere else. And I get lots of things other places, but nature is its own endless source, you know.
Yes. No, I was actually going onto your website and I love your blogs. They're so inspiring and I don't know too much about the chakras. Like I'm definitely on this new path and this spiritual awakening right now and I wanted to learn more about like chakras and energy healing and balancing because I'm also a massage therapist and
Oh,
everyone always told me like, "Oh, you have healing hands. You have healing hands." But I don't
no.
know where that comes from. I thought my hands were just strong, but
Maybe born with
yes.
it.
Yeah, maybe one of my gifts. How does someone tap into their gifts or how can they actually how can they realize what gifts they have?
Well, I think the first thing is to just start with what calls to you, because usually something calls to you. Like some people just love music, you know, and they really relate to that and it lifts them up. And some people really relate to art or science or math. I don't have that brain. Um,
Neither do I.
but some people are just born with that and they love it. And I would say start with where you're called, because there's something, whatever it is. Start there and then do something with it. I never could have imagined where writing would have taken me if I hadn't engaged in it. Does that make sense?
That
And so,
makes total sense. And then, writing was your passion, and then look where it led you even further. You know,
right,
you had
right.
that experience, and then you just took off with it.
Yeah. And sometimes, not to get into a whole thing about the chakras today, but, what I learned is that, we all are dealing with all these different energies that are in us. And sometimes some are more prominent than others. So for me, it was really like the throat chakra, because that's the chakra of communication and, words, our voice comes out of our mouth. Um, and so, and this can be a clue for some people. Like what I noticed is, like when I was a little girl, when I got sick, I almost always got a sore throat. So sometimes where you have symptoms in your body is a clue to where your energy is blocked. So,
Mm.
some of our chakras are places where energy is both blocked and where it really wants to be freed up to be expressed. So that can be a clue. Someone who, has like, always sort of has like pain in their gut, maybe they have solar plexus issues, which is
Mhm.
really about their boundaries or their manifest actually in life. So if there's a block there, that might be where their physical pain is. It's not, I don't know that it's 100% true, but I have
Yeah.
found that to be true with myself and with many other people.
Yes, 'cause I always experience lower back pain, and I'm not sure if it's from car accidents that I've had or the lifestyle that I used to have, but I always notice, like, man, why is my lower back always in a lot of pain? Well, then something must be blocked in there.
Mhm. Yeah, and it could be, I mean, that could be where, is it like way down on your lower
Yeah, that's
back?
where the
Yeah,
tailbone is.
yeah. Because I've had that too. And that chakra and birth and death and rebirth. And so, some of your years of struggle with addiction and whatever you went through were kind of destructive energies that you're moving through that part of your body to release
I
and
see,
turn
makes
it into
sense.
creativity, which you are. Like this podcast is part of the healing, I would say, of that energy, because you're doing something really creative and birthing, your own voice, you're birthing other people's voices.
And let me tell you, I don't like public speaking before. I was very shy and I never like was volunteering, hey, I'll go ahead and go on stage and, say this. No, never. So I always feel like I need to always break out of my comfort zone and do something new. And that's build me more confidence is just trying new things, see what I like. And I'm going to tell you, like during 2020, I didn't realize that I actually enjoyed cooking. I never cooked until 2020. And then I started cooking all these different types of recipes. And I'm like, this is fun. This is fun. And then cleaning. And then I was just finding so much joy in things that I thought I would never like before.
Yeah. So you were nurturing yourself.
Yeah.
Cooking is a very nurturing activity, and I understand that totally. And we needed to be nurtured during COVID, right? I mean, we were isolated and it was scary and we were afraid of each other, you know.
Right. Yes. And that was the thing. Like we were all separated because of that. Oh, you're not wearing a mask. Get away from me. Oh, you're not vaccinated. Get it. All this confusion. And it's like, oh no. I mean, let's just all of us just need to come together, and it's okay if so and so is vaccinated or so and so is not vaccinated. It's okay. It's, everyone has their own choice. It's their life.
Totally.
It's
Totally.
their
100%
choice.
fully. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is awesome. Yes. And so is your book published already, or is it's coming out pretty soon?
Not published. I'm actually in the process. I've just finished working with a professional editor, so my next step is the publication phase, and I'm really hoping that will happen soon because I want it to be in the world.
Oh,
That's my
everyone needs to buy your book. I am going to buy it myself when it comes out.
thank you so much.
Yes, everyone needs to buy your
Thank
book
you
because
so
I feel
much.
like it's
Yeah,
going to help America and it's just going to help people's families and everything.
yeah. Well, that's my hope. My hope, my real hope and my real motivation for writing this book and putting it together and putting it in the world is I have children, I have grandchildren, and there's, children, millions of children all over this world, and I want them to inherit a world that is safe, that is loving, that is kind, and that welcomes them, all children, all people. And that's my hope. That's my hope for the human race. That's my hope for America. My hope for the people that I love in my own life. And that's really my motivation for writing this book.
I love that. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Is there anything else you would like to share? I mean, even what you just said right now is just beautiful enough, but
Thank you so
anything
much.
else?
Yeah, I just want to, all the only thing I want to share is that I would love to invite people to check out my website, which is www.phyllisleavitt.com. And there's a place in there, right on the homepage where if you want to enter your email address, I'll let you know when my book comes out and keep you updated with what I'm doing. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, and I'm trying to keep up with posting about my progress with the book and what's going on, and continuing to write blogs. And yeah, and just really want to thank you for this great opportunity. I really, really appreciate you and what you're
Oh, thank
doing and your
you.
journey, and the beautiful, radiant soul that you are, that you have revived out of the ashes of whatever you said,
From the
right?
depths of hell, practically.
Right. Just it's a testimony to the beauty of all of our human spirits. It
Yes,
really
everyone's so beautiful and they have such a divine spirit. It just needs to be brought out to our world and to,
exactly.
especially to America.
To America, yeah, because we
Yeah.
love our country. I mean, we all love
Yes.
our country.
I was gonna say, I have my little flag here, but it's not here. I don't know where I put it, but I have my little American flag.
Beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much, Phyllis. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much.